Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning, and welcome to For the Record. Today is Friday, the 2nd day of February, 2018. I want to wish a happy birthday for all of those who celebrate a birthday today, including my sister, Miss Anna Smith. I also want to wish those who had a birthday yesterday, belated happy birthday as well. Lots of my friends had birthdays yesterday as well, and those who have upcoming birthdays as well. Of course, I trust that everyone had an enjoyable evening, nice and cool. Again, something that we need here in the Cayman Islands. Not too sure how attractive that is for a tourist, but when you consider some of the low temperatures in the places where they're coming from, what we have in the Cayman Islands here is certainly mild to what they experience otherwise as well. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and the management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I'm going to purposely repeat that this morning. It is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor. You're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. Normally, it is that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at fortherecord. That is one word, fortherecord, at candw.ky. In addition to that, you can call us on a WhatsApp number. That number is 925-3261. That number, you can send us a text or you can leave us a voice note. I will repeat that number, 925-3261. Of course, today being Friday, it's the day that has been assigned to the official opposition, and it is our pleasure to have in the studio with us this morning MLA and leader of the opposition, Honorable Ezard Miller. I'm going to introduce him, and then I'm going to ask your indulgence to allow me to say a few things in relation to what has been transpiring over the past few days. During that period, we want to restrict calls as well because I want to be able to talk to you without any interruption, and certainly after we're through, you're welcome to call in, and I will be prepared to take any calls, any questions that you may have as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to say good morning to Mr. Miller, let him introduce himself, and then I'll throw the mic back to myself.
Good morning.
Miller, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Connor, and good morning to the listening Cayman. And a lot of room in here this morning, OC.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that.
I'm glad to be here and look forward to an interesting day.
Yes. And, and I'll give you either the opportunity now or later on after I have spoken as well to say that the reason there's a lot of room in here today has nothing to do with you or any decision that you have made.
That I don't need to say that. Everybody knows that. But over to you.
We spoke yesterday.
I'll speak after you.
Okay, folks, I'm going to give it to you undiluted. I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to speak in
Be careful about modern politicians.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to speak in speak.
Well, I'm not a good one
at all. I do not have a written statement in front of me. Everything is coming from the heart. It is coming genuinely from the heart. It is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that is one of the reasons why I don't need to have a written statement in front of me, because it will flow smoothly from my lips. The words will flow extremely freely from my lips. Now, over the past few days, there have been talk shows talking about the absence of Dr. Steve McPhail and Miss Teresa Pitcairn from the show. There have been talks, headlines about co-hosts being fired from the show, For the Record, as well. There's no question that they were absent from the show on Monday. That Monday would have been, the 29th of January. There's no question that they were absent from the show on that day. They were not fired. Now, in order for me to explain everything to you, I have to go back in time. I have to really go back in time. And I look at one note that I have in here, and my note had to do with a meeting that was held when I was approached about hosting a show on Radio Cayman. And I made a note in my book that day that the first show scheduled for May the 21st, 2014. And then I have in brackets changed to May 26th. So originally we were going to start on the 21st of May, and we changed it to the 26th of May. Now, in my opening comments, you hear me talk about For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman. That is a fact. That, the production, Miss Susan is in there running things. We decided, on the format for the show that was agreed upon, the initial meeting that I had to discuss the show. And I want to make it clear, I was approached about hosting a show. It wasn't my idea to begin with. As a matter of fact, even the name For the Record, I thought it should be On the Record, but management and staff decided it would be For the Record, and it has stuck. It turned out to be a good choice, and I certainly welcome that and thankful for them as well. When we sat down to discuss the format of For the Record, I made it quite clear that I had no intentions of being a mouthpiece for any government. That is just simply presenting the government's viewpoint. If I were going to host a show, it would include the government, it would include the opposition, and at that point in time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Miller, but I think you and Mr. Arden McLean, were the two in the southeast corner at that point in time. You were the two independent members of the Legislative Assembly.
I can confirm that part of it.
Yes. Yep. So I insisted that if we're going to have a show, it could be 3 days per week, and we would accommodate each of those entities: the government, the official opposition, and the independents. My suggestion, government could come on Mondays. My reason for that being, they are the government in power. If something were to occur on a weekend, it gives them the Monday to be able to come on air and address the issue. So rather than having to wait until Wednesday to address it on the show, or to wait until Friday. Not to say that they would not have had other avenues to be able to address the issue, but this show on a Monday would give them the platform for that. That was agreed upon, and we moved forward. So it would be the government on Mondays, the two independents on Wednesdays and the official opposition on Fridays. Now, those of you who followed For the Record from its inception will recall that there were many days when good old gray hair, gray beard OC was on the show all by himself. The only constant on For the Record in its early inception, the only constant was the independence. They were always here. I could always rely on them. I found myself sometimes feeling for words, feeling for topics to talk about. And of course, I was new on radio, so my voice would shudder a little bit and everything. I would say, I sounded more like a donkey than than anything else by the oin and stuff like that. And I believe I have improved since then. I'll leave that up to you to decide that. But I believe that I have improved since then. But then I learned my lesson, and I said, you know something, OC? You have to start doing your homework. Start doing your research and have a topic to discuss, to talk about in the event that your guests do not show up on the show. I learned my lesson from that. And I started then to develop topics and to talk. You also will recall that in the early days, some of the guests that I had on the show included, as a matter of fact, they almost became regulars on the show. Captain Paul Hurlston. We had Mr. Ivan Farrington, who was at that time, I believe, the president of the Seafarers Association. He also brought Dr. Steve Macfield on with him. Mr. Miller also brought Dr. Steve Macfield on with him, at times as well. Fast forwarding now, right? Reached the point where I would say before the elections of last year, quite before that, there was again quite a bit of absence from the government side as well as from the opposition. The only constant, again, were the two independents. You would recall that there were times when Dr. Steve Macfield and Mr. Chris Saunders were on the show with me as well. And for many, many moons, they were on the show with me. And you may have heard several times Mr. Chris Saunders remark that, boy, how is it that the government, I wonder sometimes how the government keeps this show on, how they allow you to go on, because sometimes, we're critical of the government and everything else. And my remarks to that was, if you have a government that is mature, and if you have a government that is open for discussion, then you have no problem with that. And that is showing the fact that we're able to sit on the show, criticize the government when criticism is necessary. And most times it was constructive criticism, but that was evidence. That showed evidence of a mature government. We continued to have Mr. Chris Saunders, Dr. Steve Macfield on when Mr. Chris Saunders declared his candidacy, and this was before the nomination day. Mr. Chris Saunders no longer came on the show. Again, Dr. Steve Macfield was here. And I want to make it quite clear to the listening audience and viewing audience. Dr. Steve Macfield, I could call him at any hour of the night. Sometimes it was 10:30 when I discovered that the guest who was scheduled to be on would not be on. I could get on the phone, call him, and say, "Don't worry, I will be there." And sure enough, he was there every time, every day. So we relied on Dr. Macfield to be here. We have to go to a commercial break. When we return, I will continue with this dialogue to set the record straight. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Conner, in the studio with me this morning, Honorable Ezard Miller, leader, MLA, representing the District of Northside, and of course, leader of the opposition as well. I'm giving you a chronology of events over the evolution of For the Record, commencing in May of 2014. And I'm going to try to fast forward. I don't want to bore, all of you out there, and I know some of you want me to get to the point, and I will get to I'll get there eventually. Fast forwarding now. On several occasions, Dr. Steve Macfield actually hosted the show for me in my absence. In December of 2016, Dr. Steve Macfield hosted the show. Miss Teresa was on with him as well. We saw Miss Teresa becoming more of a fixture again on the show prior to the elections, election night, after the elections as well. Bear in mind that after nomination, after the House was prorogued and nomination day, we no longer treated the entities as legislators. They were all candidates, and any appearance on For the Record after that, they were all paid appearances after that period of time on there. So, by the candidates or their parties. And Ms. Teresa, Dr. Steve Macfield became fixtures, on the show as well. I need to make it quite clear that during the whole tenure, during that whole period, neither Dr. Steve Macfield nor Ms. Teresa Pitcairn were paid for their involvement in the show. They weren't paid. My viewpoint, they should have been paid, and I tried to ensure that they got some remuneration for that. Getting up early in the mornings, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You have to be on the road by 6:30 to be here. That's a lot of commitment. But at the same time, they're two true-born Caymanians who are committed and dedicated to their country and to imparting information and knowledge to empower you, the Caymanian people. And that is what they did, and they did it without any compensation whatsoever, which, technically speaking, if you can't be fired if you weren't hired, if you weren't paid. It was a job that they evolved into and did an excellent job and were embraced by the people everywhere they go. To Miss Teresa goes into the supermarket or wherever, people approaching, we like the show, we like what you're talking about, and everything else, right? So here's what you want to hear. Dr. Steve, or some of you may not want to hear, because there are a lot of naysayers out there, but most we want to hear. Neither Dr. Steve Macfield nor Miss Teresa were fired from the show. As a matter of fact, they were due to come on the show this morning. They decided that they will not come on to the show. They will not be here until there is some clarity in terms of their role on For the Record. And we will have a meeting to determine that clarity with management of Radio Cayman in the very, very near future. Very, very near future. Now, rumors are out there. Dr. Steve, Miss Teresa heard that there were decisions made in a party caucus that if the members of the Progressive People's Movement government were going to be on the show, they were not coming on. And I'm giving this to you unadulterated. They were not coming on to be beat up by Dr. Steve Macfield and Miss Teresa. They heard that from persons whom they deem to be credible that this was the case. Now, I pointed out to you earlier, and it was no accident when I detailed to you the fact that Mondays had been dedicated for the government, Wednesdays for the independents, Fridays for the official opposition. Those 2 hours on a Monday, on a Wednesday, or on a Friday, unless it's a situation where we're trying to accommodate someone else and we split the time, those 2 hours are for the entities that they are intended for. It is for them to decide the topics that they want to discuss, who they're going to be bringing on the show, and I'm going to concede this, that if they decide that I don't want to come on the show or I don't want to be on the show with individuals, if they said that they didn't want to be on the show with OC, I would say to them, find yourself another host. Find yourself another host if you don't want to be on. But that would not deter me from hosting Wednesdays and Fridays. I may decide, well, if I can't host every day, since it is my show, I'm not going to host any at all. But that's the determination. What I'm saying is that the decision, you have to respect their views in terms of who they want to have on their show. And I don't think that Dr. Steve, I don't think that Ms. Teresa has any issue with that as well. What they want is some clarity in terms of the show moving forward. Ms. Susan, have I missed anything? You think I've covered it all? But I want to repeat, repeat, contrary to what was put out on Facebook, contrary to what was discussed on other talk shows about firings, there were no firings whatsoever. They were free to come on the show. As a matter of fact, I called Mr. Miller yesterday jokingly, has your position changed? I say, I know it hasn't, but has your position changed? And Mr. Miller said to me, if you don't bring them on, I will bring them on as guests. And there were other MLAs, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who expressed the same opinion as well. But there was no need for them to express that because it was the decision that was made in terms of for the record was only made in relation to Mondays. And it was the view, and it was out of respect for the views that had been expressed by the members of the People's Progressive Movement. Now, whether or not that came directly or that came through the grapevine or that came via a surrogate or whatever, if there's someone out there who refutes that position. Now, I heard yesterday also it was said that Mr. Joey Hugh said that he wasn't coming on. Mr. Hugh was on Monday. Mr. Hugh and he was scheduled about 3 weeks in advance. Mr. Hugh and I had no conversation whatsoever in relation to him not coming on the show with Ms. Teresa and Dr. Steve on there. As a matter of fact, the Deputy Premier and Minister for Tourism, Minister for District Administration was on the show with me, with Dr. Steve, and with Ms. Teresa, and that show went smoothly without any hitches, no one attacking each other. Difficult questions may have been asked. Some difficult questions were asked off the air as well, and the show went well. As a matter of fact, we may ask GIS to replay that show one of these days so people can see what transpired on there as well. So again, for the record, Dr. Steve McField, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn were not fired from For the Record. They're welcome to come back at any point in time when they decide to come back on. It would not be on the Mondays because of the decision that was made there. They would have been on this morning, but they have decided not to be on until there is some clarity as far as the way forward is concerned. So for those of you out there who like to create drama, who like to misrepresent things, I am sorry, but you are wrong. Folks, please stay tuned. We're going to the Headline News. When we come back now, I will pass the mic over to Mr. Miller, and I will stay. Oh, just to say also, someone called me from Canada last night and said that they heard that I wasn't going to be on the show today as well. Well, I'm here. Please stay tuned. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA and Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Ezard Miller. We have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Orsi.
Good morning, Doc. How are you?
Mr. For the Record, yeah, and good morning to Mr. Miller, the Leader of the Opposition. I think I heard what you said this morning, and I think that I was restrained for calling in, but I have to call in. To you. I think you missed a lot of the foundation of your explanation.
Okay.
First of all, I came on there as a guest, and then I came on there as a guest with Chris Sanders, and then I stayed on, and then with Teresa, and then we were asked to co-host the show with you, Teresa, and I was asked to co-host the show with you, and then when we were asked to co-host the show with you, we talked about remuneration payment, and you told us that the cabinet secretary, Mr. Rose, was working out a package for us, and that you were looking after that.
Yeah, I told him I told you that he was looking into it, and I did say that this morning that I tried to for you to get paid. I said that this morning.
We said that we will not continue that unless we were paid, and you said that they were working out a package for that with the manager of the station and the cabinet secretary, and we said we will stay on then until that was done. Mm-hmm. We kept nearly every week of that show. We kept asking you when was the remuneration package being presented to us. When was it being presented to us? Out of our loyalty to the radio station and to the people of the Cayman Islands, we stayed on to that show. Got up 5 o'clock in the morning and came 3 times a week to the show, and that's the reason why we could not be fired, because we were not paid, mm-hmm. And that's what you were using, and Mrs. Norma McPhail is using to tell the media that we were not fired. We were not fired because we never got the package that they promised to pay us. No,
Dr. McPhail, if that wasn't the gist of my what I was saying there in terms of, comparing the fact that you couldn't be fired because you weren't being paid. I really wasn't focusing on the payment side of things. And what I was focusing on was the fact that you had not been told that you could not come back onto the record, that you weren't coming back onto the record.
Just let me reach that now.
Okay.
So we could not be fired because we had not gotten our pay that we were promised to be paid. That's one point I would like to make.
Okay.
The second point is that we knew, and you have said so many times on the radio, that if the government didn't want to come on because of the format of the show, that was their business. You were going to stay on, mm-hmm. and you were going to stay on. Mm-hmm. You kept pleading. If you replay parts of the show, and the video and the show, you will see that you were pleading with them to come back on. We knew, and we have discussed this so many times off the show, that the government did not want us to be on the show, and they want to close the show down because we were on the show. On Friday last, when I was on the show, and I noticed that there was a change in your attitude, and I went to lunch to breakfast with Teresa, and I told her, I said, do you see what's happening? And she said no, and I said, well, let me tell you, we are going to get the call before this weekend out that they don't want us on the show anymore. And sure enough, Sunday evening, you called us and you said to me that, I don't know if you called Teresa, that the Minister Hugh.
Yeah, I called both. No. I said, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, sorry.
And you said that he didn't want us to be on the show.
No, Dr. McPhail. I didn't tell you that he didn't want to be on the show. I told you that he was going to be on the show. You knew in advance. We knew in advance what had been said in the caucus. I didn't tell you that Mr. Hugh, I never had a conversation with Mr. Hugh. I couldn't have told you that Mr. Hugh didn't want you on the show. No, Doc. You got that wrong.
You said that you were hosting the show by yourself.
Right. I said that, yes.
And because he was coming on and didn't want us to be on the show there.
But I didn't tell you that he told me that he didn't want you on the show. I didn't tell you that.
Told you, but that's what you told us. Anyway, that was the insult. That was the insult. That was the insult to me. That was the insult to me. And then you met me subsequently, up to yesterday, and you said that we could come on to the show any other day besides the Mondays when the government is on, if that was open to us. And I said I would have to think about that.
Right.
And the reason why we're not coming on to show that you say that things have to be worked out is the remuneration package for us. We have to be paid, and that we're not going to come on to the show and be puppets to any government that don't want us to ask them questions and ask the hard questions, and so that we can take the answers from them. We're not coming back onto the show. It's not because we have to work out where the show is going. One, we want to be paid, and we want to work out the package of what we're going to be paid for. And secondly, if we are co-hosts on the show, we do not want to be one day for one for one bit and next day for the next person. We want to be there all the time, and we are insulted that the government that we are insulted that you say that we cannot be there on the Mondays when the government is on.
But just for the record, Dr. Macfield, I want to make it quite clear that Minister Hugh and I never had a conversation, and I never said that Minister Hugh didn't want you on the show. Now, I know you're a lawyer. I know words matter, and words can be interpreted different ways, but I just need to make sure that is clear.
Teresa has written a letter to your station manager, and I'm going to release it to the public. It says that we want to be remunerated. One of the reasons why.
Okay. But I thought we were going to discuss that this morning at a meeting. That's why I was very coy in terms of what I said. I said that we were going to have a meeting very soon, very, very, very soon. I used those words to discuss that in the meeting. I'm not sure. I mean, if you want to discuss it in a public forum, I don't have a problem with it. But I would prefer that that we discuss that privately.
Package that you promised, that they promised to pay us, and how the show is going to go forward. That if we are being paid as co-hosts, we want to be on the show 3 days of the week when the show is on, and we're not want to be pushed aside when the government is on that day, because that is an insult to our integrity.
Okay, Doc, got you on that. Got you. Thank you very much for that, Doc. Folks, you heard it directly from Dr. Steve Macfield. He will not be on the show unless he is compensated for it, and he wants to be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I've said to you previously, and I respect both views. I respect his view that he doesn't want to be put aside, and if he's good enough for Fridays and Wednesdays, or Wednesdays and Fridays, he's good enough for Mondays as well. And at the same time, I respect the position of the parties for whom the 2 hours on Monday has been assigned to in terms of who they want to have on the show. Those, of course, are not their decisions, my decisions, they're theirs, right? Now, I may have hard decisions to make as well, but I just want to say this. I started this show in 2014. I started it with the intentions of going on until after the elections. I wanted to be a part of a panel on election night to critique the results of the elections. The show, for the record, has become so popular as a result of the contributions of so many people, including Dr. Steve Macfield and Ms. Teresa. I would say that Dr. Steve Macfield has been one of the major forces behind the success of the show, with the knowledge that he has brought to the show and the insight that he has brought to the show as well. A major contributor to that. I have a decision to make. Like I said, intended to stop hosting the show after the elections, but because of the success and because of the fact that we had built up so many people's expectations, so many people feel empowered, to call into the show to express their views, that unless a decision is made otherwise, will continue to host the show because we have built up those expectations, as well. So I just want to make that clear also. One caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Devil. How are you?
Doing all right, and welcome to morning to you and Mr. Miller and the listening public. And I called to wish my good friend Anis a happy birthday.
Okay.
You announced that.
Yes.
I can't forget all the work she did for me. Some of it free during the case with me and Mr. Carl Brandon.
Oh, okay.
Mr. McDonald, James D. McDonald, a Canadian lawyer, took it free for me.
Yeah, and he was part of one of the Trade Winds newspaper.
And Anis were working with him, so I imagine plenty of hours she put in there. She didn't get paid for it, so I want to thank her for that. And I want to wish her a healthy and prosperous New Year and a Merry Christmas, because I right round the corner again. And coming back to your show there, I enjoyed it. Not all the time I got a chance to listen or call in, but it was an educational thing. And I said more than once on the radio that I think the two of them should have been getting some kind of little pay for it, because it educated a lot of us. I go back a long ways, but plenty of things they talk about was new to me. I mean, Steve, I'm not a reader. Steve is a reader. He's a walk-in encyclopedia. So I enjoy the show, and I hope it ends in a good way, but the whole island, the whole world was benefiting by the input they were putting there. And
Precisely.
I'm saying sometimes that I rub somebody, but that is life.
Yep, that's the nature of it.
So I want to thank you all, and I'm going back to work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Devil, for that. Thank you. Have a great day. We're going to take a commercial break now. For the record, we'll be back shortly. With me this morning, none other than MLA, the Honorable Ezra Miller, Leader of the Opposition as well. Mr. Miller, you haven't been able to get a word in sideways yet. This morning we may have to reschedule you for tomorrow morning.
Let's do Monday.
Starting trouble again?
Me? No, I wouldn't do anything like that. It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Because here we once again see that we are finding ways to just cast aside Caymanian talent, knowledge, and expertise for political whatever. It's sad because one of the things that I thought this show was very successful at was helping me push my mantra of participative democracy, because people were coming out of their shell.
Yes.
And not only were they doing it on the show itself, but the conversations on weekends and in the afternoons after the show was leading Caymanians to become more involved, but not just as front porch politicians where we relied on rumor and innuendo to drive the conversation.
Yeah, there were fishermen on the waterfront who were talking about various sections of the Constitution, things that you never heard about before.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the level of discussion was way above what it was 5 or 6 years ago in the great tree politics, so to speak, or in your case, rock hole where you sit down on a mountain.
Yes.
Right? But and this is the sadness in the whole thing. Because one of the reasons me in particular, enjoyed bringing Dr. McFeel on and Teresa was the expertise that they lent to the discussion. Teresa more in the area of expertise. Dr. McFeel has the expertise plus the experience. He has lived it. He is a true Caymanian who has lived this whole miracle that we are talk about, the Cayman economic miracle. and he knows the underbelly that has been covered up, that needs to be uncovered if we're going to be successful in the future. And like I say, it is sad if it all falls apart because somebody doesn't want to come on here and face tough questions, or doesn't want to listen to the program, because they all listen. Trust me, they all listen. And hear questions being asked, particularly by a public that is becoming more intellectual and more educated informed. And more informed on the issues. And that's the sadness in the whole thing, is that if this program falls apart and those two individuals are not replaced, which is not going to be easy to do, particularly in Dr. McField's case, by people who not only have that experience, but who have the willingness and the courage, right, to speak out and to call a spade, you know. And we need a lot more of this kind of discussion. So, you know, like I said, it's sad to see what's happening and how it is being framed in the absence of the politicians who are involved in the process saying anything. They can happily sit back in the building next door or at home and let this thing self-destruct because they have set the process and they have the authority, right, to let it self-destruct, but it's self-destructing because they put the venom in the jar, you know.
And by acceding to what they wanted at the end of the day, you're making them successful.
That's the other side of it.
Contributing to their success, and that is why I have taken the position that I've taken.
Yeah. I think it, you know, sometimes, you know, a cross is placed on your shoulder, and you just have to bear it. You just have to bend and bear it. You just got to bend your back and stiffen your knees, you know, and walk on.
Yeah.
And it happens regular to me, you know. I mean, I come on here, and as you know, I don't shed any bother. If you attack me personally or my family, no, that's a different ball game altogether. Or if you question my honesty or integrity. But in terms of commenting on a position that I take on a particular issue in government, I welcome that. Because as Mr. McLean always says, his daddy told him he don't learn anything from anybody who agrees with him. And the reason I have always come on these talk shows, and I'm the original guinea pig, remember?
Yeah.
It started this whole thing in 2009 with Rooster, in terms of the politicians being out on a regular basis and facing questions, was to promote participative democracy, but also to give people a voice. And giving people a voice, you often are going to hear voices, things that you don't
want to hear,
and that you don't agree with, but you must respect their opinion, you know, and that's the important thing. So it's sad to see. I hope that it all gets resolved, you know, but I'm also calling out right now the Premier to make a statement. Is it a fact that you had in a caucus meeting a discussion about the content or the operation of For the Record? If it is, you're wrong. And you need to come out now, and you need to do what is necessary to get the show back on the road. And let's get on, and let's continue to encourage our Caymanians to participate.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit what's happening in your district and in
well,
the
yeah.
Let's
lighten things up here a little bit. You know, the Namal Primary School PTA are having a Zumba night on Saturday, tomorrow, starting at 6:30 p.m. at the Civic Center, and it's a black light Zumba, and they got these rings that light up. You know, so here's the challenge: it's $10 for adults, $5, right? Come out and see Father Ezra Zumba with glowing lights. So I'm inviting everybody in the district to come out and support the PTA. The other thing that is very, very serious another light matter is this whole beach access environment that some of us have been fighting from early 2000 for well over 16, 17 years now. And the latest revelation in that the registrar has refused to register these access based on affidavits and whatnot, and what can be done about it. So when it was raised with me publicly on Tuesday, the opposition meets every Tuesday to discuss matters and our shadow minister responsibilities, right, as a shadow government, although we hear that that's not a very popular term. We decided to take it on as a challenge and to try to find ways to assist our people in getting these things registered and things. So we basically come up with three choices that we haven't yet decided. We're taking advice and weighing the options of what is likely to be most effective. I guess the first choice would be that we could in fact write a letter to the governor, the deputy governor, and says, listen, it is our understanding that this has happened, and we're questioning whether it's misfeasance or malfeasance of office of the officers involved, including the Attorney General and the Registrar of Lands, and see what comes out of that. Another alternative would be to actually go out and try to raise the funds to hire somebody like a Dr. Steve Macfield to go down to court and represent the concerns of the public. I would also like to hear explanation from the courts as to their interpretation of public interest, because it is my understanding that legal aid was refused to this organization because the matter of securing public access is not in the public interest.
And my understanding is that is being reviewed again, that whole legal aid question,
well,
I believe.
I mean, because that's about as oxymoronic as you can get, and then, of course, the ultimate action that we could take would be to move a motion in the Legislative Assembly whenever that meets, to have this aired much more publicly and with some kind of resolution to it as to what should happen. Now, the government, in particular in the last 2 years, put a lot of hope and credence into the public lands law, which was implemented. But that law doesn't have any authority that I recall to register these right-of-ways. That law is basically more concerned with the management thereof. Once they're registered, to make sure that they're maintained properly, okay, make sure they're kept cleared, and it has the ability to take the landowners to court or to fine them if they don't maintain these things and they try to build walls across them. One of the things that has become really concerning in the last couple of months, maybe as much as a year, I noticed that some landowners, because it's a public discussion, are doing deliberate things to obstruct those that exist that are not registered. And because in my constituency, I am aware of a couple which I'm trying to deal with, putting up fences. We had a case in East End where they put rocks up against the one out there by Spotters Bay. I see a chain fence been put up in one on the Queens Highway. The one by Rum Point is being blocked up by the development there, the Rum Point Club. They seem to have central planning authorities seem to have ignored. That's a registered right away, right? But those people, I think, are more concerned with the enforcement and the maintenance of them. So we really need to get them. If you go on the website, Cayman Beach Watch, they've done a great job of putting all of these discussions that have taken place about this, including identifying all the ones on West Bay Beach and the West Bay area, and North Side is there as well. I think we have some 35, and they did a good job. They not only identify them, but they take pictures from the road and from the sea, and it's quite clear how some of these are being abused by the landowners. Making every effort to keep people from using them. But so it has to be dealt with. It's very important that we do.
I see two other jurisdictions in particular, Barbados and Turks and Caicos, facing the same challenges. Now, the people in Turks and Caicos have basically taken things into their own hands. They have actually gone to these sites. They have set up registration sites there, getting people to sign petitions, and they're confronting this head on.
But we did that.
Why is it that?
Well, we did that in
we
2000. We turned in over 500 affidavits, individual that pointed to these things, having earned a prescriptive right, and that prescriptive right cannot be removed.
Well, why is it that these jurisdictions, we have Turks and Caicos, which is an overseas territory. Of course, Barbados is an independent country. Foreign investment in a lot of those. Why is it that the traditional rights of people are always being challenged and being opposed?
But it's just part of imperialism and colonialism, really. And Barbados goes back a long way, because you remember the song "Jack, This Beach Is Mine."
Yeah, that's been played loud and clear in Turks and Caicos.
We don't want to we don't want to give people our age here, but I mean that could be around a long time. But it's part of how these things are sold by the real estate people who are non-Caymanians in the industry here, for instance. And they tell the people that they own it. I mean, I remember one landowner in Northside actually put up a barbed wire fence out to the reef, you know. I mean, of course, the fellas went down and he had to take it down, right? But he claimed that we couldn't even get fish there because they were his. He owned to the reef.
I think we have two callers. Let's see if we can take one caller before we go to commercial break. We're going to take the break, and then we're asking those callers to call back. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have no callers at this point in time. We welcome those callers who we asked to call back because we were going to a commercial break, to do so if they so please. I see, Mr. Miller, there was a photograph in one of the newspapers with you with a lot of civil servants, and you were commending them on a job well done. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Because, again, that is another important thing that's basically been ignored by our foreign press. You and I both know that the Public Accounts Committee takes its job very seriously. And we have held and demanded performance from the CFOs and the chief officers in particular of the entities and the managing directors or whatever they call themselves in the public authorities and government-owned companies. And they have responded, and they have responded positively. I mean, when you think that we came from 2009, when I took over as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, where there were no accounts in government. There had not been accounts for 5 or 6 years, right? And to where we have now, where 30 out of 36 entities got unqualified audits. And again, you know, we must not trivialize the amount of work that takes, because that was not just a situation where the civil servants had to improve the current accounting. What the PMFL law did was it transitioned government from cash accounting to accrual accounting. And that in itself is a huge challenge, huge challenge. And they had to do all of that while they were actually paying bills and keeping the government running, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the committee was of the view that they deserved some accolades from us, and it was important for us to show appreciation for the work that they did. So we designed a little certificate, and we had a public ceremony on TV where we gave them the certificates. But we hope that it will be displayed in their offices with some pride, because it is I think a big achievement for the civil servants in that period of time, you know. And then the problem was that the transition from cash accounting to accrual accounting, all the issues that laid up to that, right? Because they didn't complete it in one financial year, right? You kept carrying the burden forward, you know. So it took a lot of work, and I believe that I hope that in fact, I'm confident in saying that I believe the civil servants appreciated the accolades that they received, And it is to encourage those few entities who have not yet completed exercise to get busy and get it done, you know. As the Auditor General, Acting Auditor General pointed out, you know, the PMFL, in addition to their actual accounts, requires a performance report, which should be handed to the ministry on an annual basis. And the financials are just a part of that, actually. But that report explains what was achieved, what wasn't achieved, how the funds were allocated, and how they were spent. And it gives the public a good rounded understanding of how that entity performed for the year. So we're hoping that as we move forward, in particular with this year now, we have we will have the transition to the full report, of which the accounts are just a part. But again, you see, one of the things that complicates things, right, is it is time for us to grow up politically, in that the civil service should be charged with the responsibility, whether it's the cabinet office or whatever, to structure ministries to where they're synergistic, right, and where they work together, you know. And no politician should be able to walk in after election and say, well, I'm going to disrupt this whole process because I want this subject that is over in that ministry. The ministry should be prescribed, and you walk in and you're a minister, you take over the ministry and you take over what's in it.
Because we see many instances, especially when you have a new minister come in, that they really may not have any expertise in that area anyway. They have to rely on the administrative staff. They have to rely on the technocrats who have the expertise.
But when you move subjects around, you're also moving the accounting around, right?
Yep.
And that complication, and you're moving expertise around. And it's not. It's easier to say I'm going to take healthcare or education or tourism from here and put it over here with a whole pile of things that doesn't really help that marquee item that you want in it. But then you got to get the expertise to come around, would you? And so that is the next transition that we need to make, in that the ministry is there, and should be put together with consultation of the current political thing. But then it's fixed, you know. And you walk in and you take a ministry, you take that, these are the areas that go to that ministry, you know, because the difficulty that is going to be created now in this financial year, with all the changes in subjects moving from one CFO to another CFO, how that's handed off, right, how it was accounted for. Well, now that we have standardized systems, it'll be less troublesome, right? But again, that's an unnecessary, right, workload that we're putting on these CFOs and chief officers, because the political arm wants to move subjects around, you know, and that is, we have the complication of 16, 17 anyway, where we have defined 18 months as a year, remember? So it's an 18-month accounting exercise.
Have any of the chief officers or CFOs been sounded out on this? Have you been able to get their views in terms of ensuring that those synergies remain in place whenever new ministers are coming in?
Most of the conversations that I've had with chief officers agree.
Okay.
You know, I believe it is fair to say that even the deputy governor, because I think he was one of those who tried to spearhead this, of putting departments and companies together that had some kind of working relationships and stuff. And I'm fairly confident that he would support that kind of stuff. Because it just makes, well, life easier for everybody. You know, because if you move this program, but you don't move the person that had done all the work to get the program up and going. We politicians, to be honest, it's not us that are doing the stuff, you know. No, our job is to see that it get done,
yes,
right?
Yes. And
we should be making the high-level policy decisions that leads to these programs being put in place, and we should be doing the performance evaluation to make sure that the program that we want put in place and we want developed does in fact achieve the outcome that we left, you know. But all in all, I believe that the civil service is moving in the right direction.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Switch gears. There was a video that went viral few weeks ago when you were in the UK and you posed some hard questions and some really, really hard scenarios to the panel there. Give us a little insight into that.
Well, it goes back to thine own self be true. I sat there and it wasn't really an OECD meeting as such. Mm-hmm. That's left to the government to attend. But we went to a UK and Commonwealth Parliamentary Association sponsored training for public accounts committees. And one of the days there was a presentation by the OECD and other entities. And, they started off their presentation with the Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers. And so when it came to question time, I raised the fact with the one of the people who herself was from Italy, I think it was, right? And I says, is it fair would the OECD admit that in all instances the Cayman has tried to meet the requirements that you wanted to do? Oh yeah, that's true. And Cayman should not be on this grey list or blacklist. It was supposed to come with the next day, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, well, tell me about you from the US, you from UK, you from Italy. Tell me about the European countries. Have they complied with the things that they're asking us to comply with, right? And they had to admit that they didn't, So as the discussion went on, and it led to me making that little segment that went viral, that, the world would be a lot better off if you left me alone to fix my country, but you fix yours because you asked me to do things to my country that you're not prepared to do. Because I say to the guy from the US, I said, you could never get up and say that the US is not this because they'd cut the funding and you were now in a job. Mm-hmm. But it's easy to say it about Cayman because we don't have any control over you, So it was, and there were other people represented there, like the guy from the Seychelles was also very vocal. Mr. Chris Saunders made an even more important intervention than I did, I think. Mm-hmm. Because they then fell back on the theory. Well, places like the US and the UK need to go after the money that's in these places, right? And being a former CFO of a major bank, and not just a major bank in Cayman, but a major international bank, he gave us some insight that basically just you could have a pin drop. Because he asked a question, what money are you looking for? Well, where do you think that money is? And the Cayman Islands was their answer. He said, no, that money never left London or New York. He said, and I remember the example he gave, but I think it was something about maybe somebody from Australia wanted to buy a boat from somebody in South Africa, right? And they were doing it through a company entity in Cayman. He said, all of this money goes to the correspondent bank in either the UK or London. Mm-hmm. It don't come to Cayman, right? And that was a huge epiphany and revelation because many people came up to him afterwards and said, we really didn't understand that. These people are really playing games with us, So it's unfortunate in some respects, I guess, that my little comment about I fix mine and you fix yours got viral instead of his, which was a much more, I think, important and intellectual level.
Yeah, and more technical. But what you said there is what a lot of people want
to hear, say it.
Yes, yeah. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly with the Honorable Ezard Miller, MLA and Leader of the Opposition. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, the Honorable Ezard Miller, MLA and Leader of the Opposition. Throwing the mic back over to you, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, and I've always believed that we needed to put up more resistance to some of these international bodies simply bad-mouthing us. I have long advocated from the time I was in the service that we need to be more proactive. And I have said repeatedly to the government that we should be taking out full-page ads. The government did a wonderful spreadsheet which was presented to us down at the LA of all the things we have done on bequest of international bodies to provide better regulation for the Caymanian financial industry. in my suggestion today, but this should be in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the London Times, full-page spread, because we need to start appealing to the people, right, who elect the politicians who give us the trouble, right? And our story is a story that is worth telling. Our story is not a story that we should be ashamed of, Our story is a little bit different from the passport issues that exist in some other countries, and our financial industry hasn't grown or been slowed down by outright corruptive practices in government. If we're in a corruptive practices in the other sector, who's actually getting us in trouble, and then the government got to bail them out. So the Cayman as a country has a story that we need to tell, and the government should in fact be asking the private sector to drive more of the positive aspects of the Cayman financial industry and its benefits to the world, and not just leaving it for when they get in trouble and then the government has to come forward and bail them out, so to speak.
Okay.
But one of the other things that we need to talk about is the whole schedule of meetings for the Legislative Assembly.
When is the next one scheduled? Or
I have no idea.
No
I have
indication
no
yet.
idea.
I think everyone is anticipating sometime in March. But
Well, I've heard that, but again, it is beyond me why the Premier and the Speaker, they don't need to involve me in it if they don't want. Whatever date they select, I will be there. Me and my team will be there, right? But we should be able to. They should be able to sit down this evening and decide that we're going to meet in March, even if they don't specify the exact date. But we're going to meet in March. We're going to meet in May. We're going to meet in September. We're going to meet in June, so that everybody around the whole legislative, the private sector, the government, can plan, right? It's impossible for us to plan anything if we don't know how things are going, when they're going to happen. And I mean, I see that as very kindergarten, actually. I believe that the Speaker has the authority to set the dates for the meeting of the Legislative Assembly.
normally it's agreed between the Speaker and the Premier, the leader.
Yeah. We have a business committee who should probably be involved in making these decisions, but I'm not even asking for that, right? I don't need to be a part of the decision. I just need a decision to be made.
And you'll be there for the
meeting.
I
will be there. I will organize my life so I will be there. And my team will be there. But without those kind of basic, right, kindergarten decisions, right, of when, how does the government plan legislation? Now, when I was in the government way back when I was in the 80s and 90s, we knew every year, the public knew. I get people calling me up, when is the legislature going to meet? We want to listen. We knew we were going to meet in February, right? Every year, we were going to deal with the throne speech. We know we were going to meet in June, right? And we also understood that the June meeting of the Legislative Assembly was going to be dedicated to the financial industry and the changes that they need made in the laws. Okay. And we know we were going to meet in September, right? And we know we were going to meet in November to do the budget. Now, I, as a minister then, knew, okay, well, I want to bring in a new pharmacy law, for instance. Well, it's unlikely that I'll get it in February because that is the throne speech and all. We'll be doing legislation around that. I could probably squeeze it in June, but again, we know that the financial industry has unspoken priorities, so to speak. So I select September. So I didn't know that I have to, then I start to back the calendar up. Now, if I'm going to get this piece of legislation ready for September, right? Well, okay, I need to have my original application to Cabinet to investigate setting up a new pharmacy law. February. When that paper needs to go, right? Then I need to know that, okay, so I have to come back then with drafting instructions as a policy, right? of the ramifications and the broad outlines to Cabinet before I can send it to the Attorney General's office for legislative drafting. So I probably need to get that done by April, right? Then I need to get the legislative drafting to the legislative drafting department by maybe June, right? Or July would probably be the latest, because I got to go out and get public consultation on the draft before and after, right? And I was probably the only member of Cabinet in the history of this country to every major project I took to every town hall in this country, right? And therefore, I would be ready by the end of August, at the very, very latest, for a meeting in September, right? How we seem to operate now is that the government has all these things going on in all these various directions, and they wait until we got 40 laws ready.
And then you have to spend extra hours.
And then what happens is we go down to the LA then, right? And because the government itself can't commit itself to a 6-week meeting of Parliament, right? Because they have a country to run. They have international obligations to attend. So everything is rushed, right? And we're there till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because we got to get all this done. You will know that as soon as after I took over as the opposition, one of the national issues that the opposition agreed was that Parliament should meet more often. We proposed that Parliament meet every other Thursday on a rolling agenda, right? So that you're dealing with issues, but everybody knows, right, that that's when we're gonna meet, so they'll know when to. And it's frustrating. It's discouraging, right? That. And you know I have advocated for this, OC, from the first time we came on your show. Even when I was alone in my little southeast corner. Give me some dates to work with. That's all we're asking for, you know? And I can't see how that's so difficult to do. And we would like to meet more often so that we have less to do, so we can do a more thorough job of what we do. Because nobody can tell me, because I'm there, and I know how much effort and time it consumes to research, to study, to go to your community to get input on legislation. And when you have 40 laws and you pass them all in 3 or 4 weeks, nobody can tell me. And that is why we have to come back the very next sitting, you know. The government is back there with all these amendments. I mean, we had case in last year where the government brought a law, right? And then even during the sitting of that law, right, they amend every clause in the law. Come on, man. But what happened between Friday this week and Wednesday next week? That you got to change every clause in the law. You know, was it you didn't have the adequate public participation? You didn't take time to see how it's going to affect other laws. You know, this should be unnecessary. We need to spend the time, and there's no substitution for effort, right? And again, I want to tell you, right? It takes time to do these things, and you have to put in effort if you want to get it right.
Is there any need to streamline or to reorganize the legislative procedures to address some of the issues? For instance, what you spoke about, you're dealing with a particular bill, and during the debate of that bill, during the committee stage, so many amendments taking place. Are there additional legislative staff, for instance, that you could have someone who has oversight of the bills and stuff like that? Because everything goes through legislative drafting, then approved by cabinet, and then given out.
Most of the amendments to legislation are related to the policy implementation, not to the legalese or to whether we do it. Here's the process that we have now. First of all, is a constitutional requirement that the things are issued 21 days before. And I must say that this government has tried very hard to, and I met that most of the time.
Adhere to that.
Then there's a first reading and a second reading of a bill. First reading is basically just the title and set down for a second reading. Second reading is when the actual debate takes place, and that is when the minister gets up and explains to the public what the law will do, what he's trying to achieve, what should be the outcome of the law. That's what the debate should be. Oftentimes, that doesn't take place. Then it goes to committee stage, where we go through it clause by clause, line by line, right? Current rules require that if I want to file an amendment to what the government is presenting, I have to file it give 3 days notice. Sometimes because of the rapidity with which the government wants to process the bill, right? That's not allowable, and the speaker has the authority to waive the 3-day requirement. Okay. So that we can actually get the amendment in. Mm-hmm. Far too often, and then the standing orders prohibit first reading, second reading, committee, third reading on the same day. Again, to give, if you're my constituency and you hear me get up and debate a bill, public lands law, for instance, and something rings a bell, right? Part of the reason for those not being able to do that on the same day is at least you have that one night, if not other times, to call up and say, well, I heard this down there yesterday, you need to explain this to me, or have you thought about this, have you thought about that? Mm-hmm. Because it is this kind of participatory democracy that gets good governance, you know. But oftentimes, because we have further to do, we get the government suspending so we can do first, second, third reading committee stage in one day, you know. So I don't think there's any adjustment needs to be. I just think that we need to meet more often, right? So that we have a shorter agenda, right? Because some of these legislative things is very complicated. I mean, you know, if you get presented with a 30-page law with 7 to 80 clauses in it, right? You need to. It takes time, and there's no substitute for preparation, right?
That's true.
And you can't prepare without time, you know. And because the other thing that I would like to see happen more often, and we have tried various ways to get ourselves involved into the discussion that takes place in developing the legislation in the first place. You know, I'm a great fan of select committees of the House, because my experience in select committees have mostly been good, in that you get, as a non-government member, you get to hear all sides of the coin. You get to hear from the government, you get to hear from the stakeholders who's going to affect, you get to ask questions because people come in and make representation. But we haven't had a serious select committee in a long time. I think the last legislation we had that was done by select committee was in the early 2000s when you did immigration law, right? But all of those major legislations, I think, should go through select committee, and they should be multiple meeting. Some laws need to be multiple meeting and not multiple day, right? But you know, we just not getting the cooperation, because you can't develop a complete replacement of the trade and business law, for instance, as the government did in the last administration.
Okay, we have one caller. Let's go. We have a break. Which one you want to take first, Ms. Susan? The break? We're going to take the break, caller. Please stay on the line. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we return, we will be taking your call first. Please stay tuned. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. We're going straight to the phone lines as promised. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Good morning, caller.
Lucy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Miller.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I later this morning, because I like when children do the gospel as a medley.
Oh, okay.
That's very beautiful. I told her you could do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a special request, huh?
I told her a couple of times now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why she's doing it, because you know that I am regular. I'm a regular listener.
Okay, we know that,
okay.
Definitely.
Listen now. I don't want to get into about this For the Record show business. Yeah, I don't want to get into that.
Okay,
but Mr.
that's
Miller,
fine.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
But listen now. I'm not pleased about it.
Yes, I know that.
Okay. Now here you know, Mr. Miller. I ask you a question that I know you can answer. Or yeah, because you pay attention to everything.
I try.
Do you have any idea of how many insurances that do not? I mean, the private pharmacies that do not take Senegal? Did you get that?
No, I don't know. I don't have any data as to the exact number.
Yeah, but there is some, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now, people know me by voice. I'm from West Bay.
Right.
Rest. And there's one down here.
Uh-huh.
Just a while ago, they had this big time ad in top India about we care and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
But now, there's a medication, and people, some of them don't like to hear me say anything about the HSA.
Uh-huh.
But I don't care.
Right.
I can say what I got to say.
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it's like I
Well,
keep
we
saying.
all need to be saying a lot about that.
Listen good to me now. It's like I keep saying, out in public or over the air, my mouth do not have no zipper. It don't have a padlock, and therefore it is open, and I'm going to keep it open.
Right.
That sound good?
Oh, yeah.
So now, about this one down in West, there's a back number HSA.
Uh-huh.
There's a medication. It's two different kinds of it. I like to talk to you because I know you know your business out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's one that they have that is film coded that I cannot have. But now the one that I can have, they haven't had since next month going to be 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So when you go to pay $20 for 50,
Yeah.
just one prescription and a 50
I
tablet.
know, yeah.
And then for this one down, that after spending so much with them last week Friday, I found I'm carrying some receipts now, so get them sorted out for Cynical, right?
Right.
They don't take Cynical. I say, oh, you're going to tell me that now after all that I have spent with you.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So that part now I'm finished with. And I'm going back in there for chewing gum.
Right.
And I don't use that much, you know. It's not good for your teacher, no.
No.
And other things too. Mr. Miller, I am so look at when you stick out talking off air.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, Mom.
But I know but it's like I say, I know you were always busy. Because you is always researching.
I try to, yeah. Uh-huh.
And searching.
Right. But planning that research includes talking to people like you, because I know your value.
Okay.
The kind of information you can give me, I can't find no book or no computer.
And look at that's the reason why I don't have a computer.
Yep.
You hear what I'm saying? I want to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Right.
And I must say something more. Whenever I call in, a while ago when I mentioned HSC first, whenever I'm calling and any of them is on the especially they talk to the show, right?
Uh-huh.
It'd be better if we talk to somebody, But listen, I am tired. I didn't get a chance to say this last week. Was it Wednesday, whatever, Monday or whatever time it was? I can't remember. First they said, call them after they gave the number. Then they said, no, they'll call me. When they called me, no, I missed the call, and then here what happened. And I had enough credit then to call them back.
Uh-huh.
And then another thing, I am tired of talking to people from there up there over the phone if they get hold of them. But most of all, I just don't like talking to a machine.
No, you don't hear it anymore, and I do.
Oh, but I stopped doing that,
Yeah.
I stopped doing that because that won't make you waste a little credit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't into no plan business that I'm into pay as you go.
Yep.
Okay, and put on 10 or so at a time, and when that's done, I know it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to leave it now to you and OC now. So
All right, Mom. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
Always glad to hear you.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much. We have about 6 minutes left, Mr. Miller. Hand the mic back over to you.
Well, again, I want to go back to promoting the things that are happening in my district. As I said earlier, the Northside, the Inamoy Primary School, PTA is hosting a Zumba Black Light Night tomorrow. It starts at 6:30 p.m. at the Civic Center. The cost is $10 it's a fundraiser by the PTA. It's $10 for adults, $5 for children. The $10 and the $5 gets a slice of pizza, a soft drink, and some glow bands that you can put on your arms or ankles and stuff. And I think a good way to promote it, to try to get people to come out, is to come and see Fat Ezra Zumba. But it's important that we support these things, and and the other thing is that the district council, we met on the last Thursday in January, and for the meeting in February, Having had a presentation on the proposed national tourism plan, I had to remind the minister and his staff, who were probably the people who were most responsible for that, is that we are not accepting a meeting in East End at which Northsiders should attend. We want a meeting in Northside. They did us that with the old people's policy, and it was very difficult to get the people who would be the stakeholders of any older person's policy to East End to participate. So he has agreed that yes, they will have a separate meeting in Northside, and we're proposing that I suggested that they hold it at the night that the district council meets, which is the last meeting, because then we can get people out and we can promote it, because we want people to come out and participate. Outside of that, the of course the matters of crime is on everybody's mind. I continue to express my disappointment on the frequency of meetings of the National Security Council. We've met once in 8 months, which I think is far too little given the increased crime that's going on in our community, and in particular violent crime. But I'm not the person who chairs that. I'm not the person who organizes it. I attend. Whenever they have it, I'll be there to put my 2 cents forward. But I was hoping that, and what I envisaged about this body is certainly not what the body is. Whether I can influence any changes with the new governor when he arrives. I
was thinking that, yes.
That it be developed into something that I believe is more useful to the community, i.e. that is the body that looks at crime strategies, looks at what we need to do with border control, what we need to do with interdiction, what we need to do with education, etc., to prevent crime, and you come up with a national strategy that then we can take to the public, and the public can discuss it. I don't believe that the framers of the Constitution, it was not my understanding when that item was put in the Constitution, that it was intended to be a secret meeting of secret people who you get coffee and biscuits and you talk about things, and there is very little, or in fact most of us are bound by secrecy and confidentiality, that we can't come out and discuss what goes on in there. And I don't think that was the intended purpose of the National Security Council. I don't think it was just to confine itself with who's recruited for particular spots or whatnot. But we have many people in this society, I believe, who can advise that council through the members that sit there. The members are giving we come up with a strategy that is public discussed. Because let's just be factual here now. Most of the people who are crossing a border illegally, whether with goods or people or whatever, right, are coming from a particular quadrant of the compass. It shouldn't be difficult, right, to put radars up on shore, right, which are constantly present. We don't want another fiasco as we got with the cameras and the light poles, but there are people in this country who can advise the government on the kinds of radar and the kinds of cameras that we need to put out there, right, that can detect these boats miles offshore on approach, because the curvature of the earth will allow us to go quite a distance out to sea, right? It's not that sudden, and we have to do what we have to do,
I know you don't necessarily speak for MLA Mr. Ard McLean, but I see where finally things are getting done on the road in that area, starting from, I think it appears as if the east of the blowhole to the west of Lover's Wall, or in that area there.
Yeah, and he's rather happy about that. I would say we've discussed this. And that section of the road really needs to be repaired. The other thing that needs to be repaired is they need to continue other sections of the east-west arterial that have deteriorated badly. There's still some areas between Bordentown and Breakers and lower down in East End. There's some sections along Frankstown Road. There's some sections.
That area when you're entering Breakers, right where you come up the hill where the quarry is there, that is terrible.
Yeah.
That's
And then
terrible.
you come further down into Georgetown. We started that little thing at Spot Street. That needs to be continued. And I know that's a matter of resources, but if we don't find the resources to repair these places, soon it's only going to cost more to repair it than anything. So we need to have we need to find other sources of revenue that are go directly to the NRA to maintain these roads. Of course, giving up infrastructure fees to inbound investors and all the other things that they don't pay makes it more difficult for us to provide. It's just licensing our cars, But I think that what Cayman needs now from a governance point of view is more involvement of Caymanians. And I challenge Caymanians to come forward and get involved, Don't just roll with me no see when you see us on the street corner, And this is as I said earlier, this is my great sadness about what appears to be the potential deterioration of the show. My hope was that the show was going to go daily because of
people wanted it to
because of what it was doing to the public, and all the other talk shows contribute as well in terms of giving people an outlet, and oftentimes when you come on here, you get some good advice from being if you want to take it. Now, if you want to take it, there's none so deaf as those who won't listen, and none those who blind as who don't want to see. Right? But we need to find ways, and the opposition is developing a plan of public consultation, because we want to assist the government, since they don't seem to be willing to do it, to come up with an social economic plan for the development of the country. And we think those decisions need to be made by Caymanians.
Okay, Mr. Miller, I want to thank you very much for being on the record this morning, folks. I want to thank you for allowing For the Record allowing For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want, or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for Talk Today. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
For the Record is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your bank.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.